Thank you. Hazak Baruch. Okay, everybody. Hazak Baruch. Thank you guys so much for coming. Really appreciate everyone that keeps coming back. Baruch Hashem. So, it's not, it actually is. It's our first week after Tisha B'Av. And, we don't really have that big of a class tonight, so I think we can have a little bit more of a private session. We can have a little bit more, we'll call this group therapy. We can really try to unload. So, when we spoke about Tisha B'Av, and we spoke about destruction, and we spoke about where we are in the current timeline of history, and the fact that we are missing a Beit HaMikdash. And the most important thing that we want really is not just its rebuilding for the sake of its rebuilding, but for the fact that we want to come home, and we want to come home to shalom, to shleimut. We want to come home to peace. What is the takeaway? I would like to hear what other people have as a takeaway for what they took away from Tisha B'Av. Any ideas? Yeah.
For me, I think it was that Tisha B'Av is what we don't have anymore. But the good part of Tisha B'Av is there's a good part. It's what we strive to have. We don't have it, but we know what we want and how, and now we know what to work with.
Right.
To get it.
And we strive for it. Anyone else? Anyone other different ideas? Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, just saying.
Oh, you're just saying hi? Okay, fine.
Well, I would say that it's time that we stop crying and start working and building.
Okay, very beautiful. So we had Tisha B'Av and ended up being Wednesday night into Thursday. What? Oh, yeah.
Our love for Gullus.
Our love for Gullus.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Because it got me thinking that if we have everything that we want with Beit HaMikdash, what is it to strive for?
Oh, what was your name?
Danny Shilbo.
Dani? Amazing. I really love what you said. Can you want to keep saying it?
And therefore, here in Gullus, we have to work for our connection with Hashem, right?
Okay.
If the Shekinah just rests at us at all time, we won't have to work for our connection with Hashem, and it'll just be there, and everyone will be the same, and it won't really...
Right.
Yeah, but then we have to keep it.
Right, and then we have to keep it.
When do you want it to end?
You want Gullus to end.
Do you want it to end?
Do I want 10?
Yeah.
Gullus? Honestly, no.
That's
Fair. That's very honest, and it's very real. I appreciate for you being honest. I think a lot of us feel that way, but we don't want to forward or advance those feelings. Maybe most of us actually feel like we don't want the good that we have to end. I actually took away something very interesting this year, something a little bit different than what I usually do. Since Tisha B'Av was Wednesday night, and it continued into Thursday, we had from Thursday night till Friday night, we had just one day of the week where we were able to regain ourselves. We went through 3 weeks of mourning. We went through the 9 days where we abstained from a lot of different things, from meat, many Ashkenazim, from showering, from listening to music. We went through the Tisha B'Av. We didn't eat. We sat on the floor. We mourned. We cried. And then right after that, on Shabbat, this last Shabbat that we just had, was called by a very special name. It's called Shabbos Nachamu, Shabbat Nachamu. And the reason it's called Shabbat Nachamu is because the Haftarah, the Navi that we read on last week's Shabbat, the one directly following Tisha B'Av, is Nachamu Nachamu Ami. So after 3 weeks of the Gimel Purniut, where the Navim are telling us this is going to happen if you don't follow Hashem, this is what's going to happen if you don't do tshuva, destruction is going to come upon you, you're going to be scattered amongst the land, you're going to lose your family, all this and that. The Navi is going to come and say, now we have the 7 weeks of consolation up until Rosh Hashanah. And the Navi came and said last week in the Haftarah, Nachamu, I'm giving you nechama, I'm giving you consolation. That don't worry, there's going to be a time where the galut will end, there's going to be a time where the geulah will come, the final redemption, it will come. And I thought to myself, I said, how can it be that after going through 3 weeks of mourning, after going through the 9 days of more stringent mourning, and we're sitting on the floor and crying together on Tisha B'Av, how can it be that just 1 day later, Hashem expects us to say, Nachamu Nachamu Ami, everything's going to be good. Don't worry, flip your spirits, because now at the end of Av, now we're at the second half of Av, everything's going to be good. Yeah.
Because I think there's an answer to that. You can see this with King David. King David, he had to, either him or his generals had to kill his son Absalom. He kept warning him and warning him and warning him and said, no. And then it happened, and his son was killed, and he was commanded to get up. Meaning we're only allowed a certain amount of time that we can mourn for things.
Yeah, but you see, that's
that's
what's suggested as a rule. But as human beings, after going for 3 weeks and 9 days, just for the Torah to say, Nachamu Nachamu Mi, you have Shabbat, now it's time to be happy again. Yeah.
I think it's just because by nature grief is like limiting. We after some time, like our grief will just naturally sort of go away because with the passage of time.
Hashem gave us 1 day. Hashem gave us 1 day. Between Tisha B'Av and Shabbat Nachamu was 1 day. Yeah.
So grief doesn't just go away.
than you expect. Sometimes you need more time. Sometimes you just need, like, you need to do it quick. And maybe this year he was like, you
It's gotta be
snap
faster.
out of it.
So I actually took away something. Yeah.
No, it's not that you. It's right. It's not that the grief goes away. It's you learn to live with that in that space.
I hear. So I hear what you're saying.
You-
So
Like you learn to live with that. In the beginning it's like this,
Mhm.
and then it gets smaller and smaller, or it goes into a different room.
until one learns to live with it, or it becomes becomes
It's
happenstance.
in the space, but it's not like hovering over your life.
So I think something very differently, a little bit differently. I think that on Shabbat Nachamu, when Hashem comes and says that this is now a Shabbat of consolation, this is now a Shabbat that's going to come after Tisha B'Av, that's going to come after 3 weeks, that's going to come after 9 days. I think that just like on Tisha B'Av, we ask Hashem, when are you going to bring us the temple? When are you going to bring us redemption? When are you going to finally take us out of Gullus? When is this going to finally come to end? When is this whole nightmare that we call life, that we have accepted to be as normal, when is it all going to come to an end? Just like we asked that question to Hashem, I think HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks us a very quiet question on Shabbat Nachamu. And I think it's a very sobering question, which I want to at least intro the beginning of the class tonight. I think just like we ask Hashem, when will this all end? I think Hashem is cautioning us and asking us, my children, if I bring you Geula, and I bring you the Beis HaMikdash, and I bring you the wealth, and I bring you the health, and I bring you all that you ask for, will you still reach out to me in the way that you have been? Because the way poverty brings tefillah out, the way need brings a connection out between us and Hashem. When we sit on the floor, we cry, it's because we're missing. It's because we're lacking. It's because we want to extend our hand and we want Him to extend His hand back. But I think Hashem asks us a cautionary question. If I give you all that you ask, and now you're wealthy, and now you have everything that you could have asked for, the abundance, would you still reach out to me and cry from the depths of your soul like you did when you didn't have? Will you do it through abundance? And that's actually what happens in last week's parasha. Moshe Rabbeinu, he's preparing the entire nation. He's not preparing them for war. He's not preparing them to go out and to fight. He's saying at the end of last week's parasha, he's saying there's going to be a time where you're going to have homes, and you're going to have food, and you're going to have all the health and the riches that you're going to ever ask for. And the pasuk says, Pen tishkach et Hashem. But lest you come to forget Hashem. When a person has everything and he's flying on cloud 9, and he thinks that it's kochi ve'otzi yadi, all this wealth that I have, it's because I worked hard. The cars, the money, the wealth, everything I have is because I did it, right? But when a person has nothing, he has nothing to bask in himself for. He reaches out to Hashem. So Hashem challenges us. Okay, fantastic. You reached out to me 3 weeks. It was hard, but I felt connected to you. Now Shabbat Nachamu comes and He asks us, what's going to be when I give it to you? Are you still going to want to be connected to me? And I think one of the sobering lessons that we can take out from Tisha B'Av is not just how do we continue connecting to Him through lack, but how do we continue connecting to Hashem through abundance? When I have all that I need, when I feel like right now I'm in a good place, where right now I'm mentally, I'm physically, I'm spiritually, I'm good, do I still cry out to Hashem? Do I still say, I still feel like there's a lack? And that's the feeling of loving Gullus a little bit too much. Maybe loving the fact and remembering the fact that we are still in exile and none of this is normal. The fact that we can have a mayor that can be so despondent and just speak so openly and give out lists of all the Jewish names in the city and say that that is normal. To come and say and normalize the fact that there is anti-Semitism and to say that this is just the way things ought to go. If you study history and you study patterns, none of this is normal. And so when we tell Hashem, I'm ready to come home, is it only from a place of lack or is it also from a place of abundance? And that's the cautionary tale. That as people progress in life, as we achieve, as we grow, and as we do and accomplish different things, how much of a presence does Hashem remain in our lives? Is it a hollow spot where He always is? Or does that spot fluctuate and get smaller and get bigger depending on the space that I'm in? I think, it being the few days after Tisha B'Av, it being the day after Tu B'Av, there's a concept that we've been speaking about. We know that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinat Hinam. It was destroyed because of baseless hatred. And we spoke about last week, can hatred really be baseless? Can someone really just hate without any sort of base? How can it be? We spoke about that, we touched a little bit on it last week. But if baseless hatred is what destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, and it's what separated us as a nation, it's what separated us as a people, then perhaps the shalom and the achdut is what's going to bring us together. And I found this Mishnah, which is amazing on all fronts. And it's going to sound incredibly simple, and it's going to sound incredibly juvenile. But I think with Hashem's help, once we unpack the depth of what this Mishnah is really teaching us, I think we'll walk away with something very unique, very substantial. Here's what the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says. It's in Perek Daled, Mishnah 15. He says like this, Rabbi Matya ben Charash Omer, Have makdim b'shalom kol adam. You should always say hello. Say shalom. Be the first one to say shalom to every person. Have magdim et shalom lekol adam. Ve'have zanav la'ariot. And you should be a tail to lions. Ve'al tihe rosh l'shualim. And don't be a head to the foxes. Interesting Mishnah. And why I think, like just off the bat, why this Mishnah is fascinating. Because you have our religion, right? Perhaps one of the oldest religions that survives in history to this day, except for maybe idolatry, because idolatry even predates Judaism. It doesn't predate God, but it predates Judaism, idolatry does. And you have Judaism where we have the Kohanim, and we have the temple service, and we have the Ketoret, and we have a Mishnah and Avot that says, say hello to people. Be the first one to say hello. It teaches you, just say hello. And you think to yourself, you said, how can this be? Mishnayot are meant to teach us midot. They're meant to teach us something that's deep. I understand. Perhaps character traits that maybe I would have otherwise not understood. But what's the rabbi saying over here? Have magdim b'shalom kol adam. What is he saying over here?
I think it means that to be a mensch in the simplest form.
Good.
You don't have to be like.
Good. You know, it ticks me off to no end how when people, and even myself, how when we try to be so religious, and we try to have all the chumras and do all the mitzvahs and do everything to the highest degree of religiosity that we can, and we forget how to treat other people. And we forget that the point of religion, the point of mitzvot, the point of spirituality is to become a mensch, is to become a good man and woman, to become a good husband and a wife. That is the point of all that we practice. So the Mishnah is saying, are you recognizing how you're treating people? Do you recognize how your behavior and your actions are affecting those around you? You know, Rav Yisrael Salanter used to admonish his students. He used to say that this year for Pesach, I want matzot with the highest level of chumrot. I want matzot with the highest level of stringencies. Follow all the stringencies for my matzahs for Pesach. And the students would go to Rav Yisrael Salanter. They would ask him, Rebbe, what stringencies did you have in mind? The flour, the water, 18 minutes, ma'im shelanu, what are you asking? And he told the students, make sure you don't hurt the feelings of the almanah that's rolling out your matzah, of the widower that's just trying to make a couple pennies, baking matzah for her family. Make sure to not make her feel bad. Those are the chumras that I want. You know, in an effort to try to go and conquer and to be the best quote-unquote Jew that we can be, we forget that there are other people around us. And we forget that we could, God forbid, step on other people's toes, and we have to remind ourselves a sobering thought that perhaps the actions, I'm not just isolated in this world, it's not just for me, but other people around me, that if I hurt them along the way, then what is it worth? If as I'm climbing the mountain, I'm stepping on the heads and the toes of other people, then what is my climb and ascension worth? When Hashem is saying, Derech Eretz Kadma Torah, and that midot are so much more important, because that's the point of the mitzvah. The point of spirituality is to develop yourself into a person that's conscious, a person that's not just living on autopilot, not just living by rote. Yeah.
What if it feels like the right thing to do?
What?
What if it feels like the right thing?
What if what feels like the right thing to do?
To hurt someone.
To hurt someone?
Yeah.
I'm not quite understanding.
No, like a person can go off instinct and go, oh, like this action's hurting someone, so I'm just gonna like hurt them more so that it can end in that moment.
Well,
rather than prolonging it or changing it.
Oh, so is your intention to hurt them, or is your intention to perhaps teach a lesson? Or your intention is to establish a boundary, which the byproduct of which would result in hurt, but the intention is to establish a boundary such that you don't get hurt in the future. I'm not exactly sure what your diuk in your question is, but if the intention is to hurt, that's not the right thing.
Yeah.
If it's a byproduct of having of following a healthy relationship, that you're establishing boundaries that the other person would ultimately get hurt from, maybe that's a byproduct of something that's right. But to hurt someone,
Something that's actually hurtful.
maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a case-by-case basis. It doesn't sound like the right thing, but I'm not so sure. So, the Gemara says something very fascinating. The Gemara in Ketuvot, in Daf Kuf Yud Aleph, Gemara 111, it says, greater is a person that makes other people's teeth white than someone who sells milk. You know this Gemara? Kuf Yud Aleph. It's a beautiful Gemara. What does the Gemara mean? I'll give you an example. Rav Shalom Shwadron used to speak about the Alter Mislavatka. And he used to say something fascinating. He used to say, imagine you have a guy that's standing outside the shtibel, and constantly on a very hot, sweltering day, he's giving people milk. Now you can imagine a very, very hot day, he's giving a guy a nice big glass jar of milk. Now back in the day, milk is where people got all their nutrients from. Vitamin D3, K2, vitamin A, B, C, mabar, everything, right? Nowadays you have supplements, people just take pills. But back then when people needed vitamins and nutrients, they would get it through a glass of milk. So you can imagine a guy that's standing at the shuk, outside the shtibel, and he's constantly going and giving to someone a nice geschmack glass of milk. And as soon as he's done, he goes inside, he cleans out the jug, makes sure it's clean, refills it, stands outside for the next guy. And he's doing this all day, every day, giving people calcium, giving people nutrients, giving people nourishment, and he's making a lot of people happy. The Gemara says, greater is the guy that makes another person smile, that makes another person's teeth white, than the guy who sells milk, bashuk. What's the reason? You know, psychologists even teach us that when somebody smiles at another person, it actually instinctively causes that other person that's looking at them to smile back. You look at a baby, right? You have a baby, and you smile at a baby. The baby instinctually just has no cognitive understanding, but he wants to smile back. Likewise, if you yell at a baby or if you put on an angry face or a mean face, that baby's going to get upset. He's going to get scared. They don't understand why, but there's something about it that just causes another person to smile. And smiling doesn't hurt, except on your wedding day, when smiling very much does hurt. You should all be zachet to understand that feeling, because you're going to understand that the photographer is going to want to take a picture with you, and then you and your mother-in-law, and then you and your mother and father-in-law, and then mother-in-law and the sister, and then the brother, and then it keeps going and going and going, and then it hurts your face will hurt.
It's good. It's good.
But the best thing, and I only understood this after my wife and I got married, is the amount of sheer pictures that the photographer insists on taking of the bride with her dress. Not the bride in her dress, the bride with her dress.
Yeah.
She's standing with the dress, and then the bridesmaids are on the dress. Like this dress has become a part of the family, you know? I just wish that, you know, somebody would look at me like my wife looked at that dress. It's so much adoration, but no, we gave it to a gemach. We gave it to a gemach. What? It's a very high level reach. But you can imagine, like it's a very beautiful thing, because once you go and you show someone that there is beauty to it, there's happiness, there's simcha to it, then you see that they also want to return that kindness, they want to return that favor. You know, I'll never forget when my son was just born. So it's my second child. My son was born. I was in the hospital, and it was very late. It was in the morning. Stood until 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. I didn't have my tefillin. I had to go pray shachars. So I took an Uber home, and I remember coming into the Uber, and I said, you know, good morning, happy. And I was happy the guy's like half dead, 4:30 in the morning. And I always try to do this because of this Mishnah. I always try to go and say good morning first, but not just a good morning, not just a hello, but like a hello, like a really happy one. Because, you know, there's one way that a person can say hello, hello, good morning, good morning. But you say hello, hello, how are you? And it makes them feel like they're cared for. It makes them feel like, oh, this person really cares. So I'm sitting in the Uber in the back. It's like 4:30 in the morning, and the guy's just going on and on about this mixtape that he's trying to put out. I'm not his clientele. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to buy this mixtape. But I was like, oh, wow, that's so interesting. You know, tell me about this record label. Like, and I can barely keep my eyes open. Tell me about this record label. Tell me about the songs you're putting on. Who's featured on the album, this and that. And I gave him some advice. I told him some people to speak to, the kind of mindset, the motivation that he needed to hear at the time. And he brought me back to my house, and he's like, is it okay if I just give you a hug? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, because no one has ever given me the ear that you've been able to give me the last 30 minutes. And I said, what did I do? I just sat in the back and I just gave the guy a little bit of attention. I gave the guy a little bit of a ear, a little bit of a hello, a little bit of a good morning, magdim b'shalom, to show that it's not just me in this world, we're here together. We're here to show that there are other people that also matter. And he gave me a hug, and it was a very beautiful moment. And it's one of those moments that you don't forget. You know, it actually also reminds me of a story of Rav Aaron Forst. It took place in Eretz Yisrael, and it came one time that he needed to hail a cab from Eretz Yisrael. He hailed a cab, he called the cab driver, and he sees the cab driver said, you know what, the whole day, this whole week, this whole month, not only been down on my luck, the business has not been so good, but I'm praying, I'm wishing for a guy, for someone to just sit in the rear view mirror, sit in the back seat, to just give me the eye contact, to show me that I am a human being. And he said, whoever can do that will just regenerate, restore my faith in humanity. And this Rav Aaron Forst, he sits in the back of the cab, and he makes eye contact, and he says, hello, how are you? How's everything doing? How's everything going? And he says, okay, at the end of the trip, after 20, 30 minutes, he says, how much do I owe you? He says, don't worry about it, the cab driver's on me. And he says, how can that be? He said, every day I'm sitting in this cab, every day I'm sitting behind the wheel, not one person says good morning, not one person says good afternoon. And until you told me good evening, I thought that all faith in humanity was gone. So your cab fare was worth much, much more than whatever I could have made from the dollars and cents that you would have given me. Don't worry, it's on me. He calls the house a couple weeks later, and he says, you know, ring, ring. The son picks up. He says, excuse me, like, is Rav Chaim here? He says, Rav Chaim, who is this? Is the cab driver from a couple weeks ago. He says, oh, did we forget something in the cab? Is everything okay? Did we not pay a fare? He said, no, everything's fine. I drove your father a couple weeks ago, and I just want to say hello to him. I want to hear the smile in his voice. You know, sometimes when you can hear a smile when you're speaking to someone and they're just happy. And it's infectious, because when you show someone that you are happy to be there, you're not just doing it as a nicety. You're not just doing it as something that's colloquial. Because how did we learn to say good morning? How do we learn to say hello to another person? We learn it probably because of the way we see our mother and father. And the way we teach our kids is based on the way we act. You know, that's why every time the Amazon driver, right, Amazon delivery guy comes to our house, my son always says, thank you, like really, really loud, thank you so much. Or the UPS or the driver, to show them that these people don't just work for us. It's important to say hello. It's important to show hakarat tov. And the way you say things is just as important as the things that you say. So let's look back at the Mishnah. Have magdim b'shalom kol adam. What does it mean to be magdim b'shalom? To begin with shalom. What does that mean? The Mishnah that's teaching us to initiate the greeting. Is the person that returns the greeting the same as the person that initiates the greeting?
No.
Now, you can say that, okay, fine, the person that says back, good morning, the person that says back, hello, perhaps you would have already said hello anyway. So then why wouldn't you do it first? And if you do it first, you know how much it humanizes the people to whom you say hello to? So for example, you know, it pains me when you see the people in the shul, how they say hello to the wealthy people. They say, hello, how are you? And they give them so much kavod, and they give them so much honor. And to the aniyim, those who they know don't have so much money, those who they know that are not so opulent, those who are not so wealthy, the hello is not as nice. Hey, how are you? Nice to see you. Happy that you're back in shul. But imagine how much it brings a person up, that they know that they're not on the same echelon, the same socioeconomic class, but you tell them, it's so good to see you. I'm so happy to see that you're here. It's a different level. It's a different kind of feeling. Where do we see this in the Torah? Where do we see that this Mishnah is actually reflected in the words of the Torah? Anyone know? Anyone have any ideas, guesses?
Abraham,
Abraham where?
when he tells Hashem to take it easy for a moment and takes in the people passing by to feed them and whatnot.
Okay, so you're saying that because he ran to the guests, so he wanted to initiate that, right?
Yeah,
That's what you're saying?
I think it's a very similar type of initiative that
Okay.
it takes to greet people. Like if you walk in an elevator, nobody talks in an elevator.
Nobody talks in an elevator. Nobody wants to talk in an elevator.
Yeah, and I refuse to enter an elevator with people or exit an elevator with people. At least saying either good night.
You must mark your presence. That's right. Okay, that's a good one. I like that. I didn't think about that one. Yeah, that's a good one, Abraham. But over there, you don't see that he actually said something. His actions might have proven it. His actions might have shown it.
Yeah.
But he didn't actually make there was no dialogue there. So it's a good one. We'll put it to the side. Anyone have any other ideas? Yes.
No, also that states that you have to load someone else's, a person you don't like's camel before.
Load the donkey, unload the donkey of your enemy before the donkey of your friend. Okay.
That shows that. So too, but if you have to run to do it for an enemy, so it's like that too.
But that's also an action. That's not a dialogue. It's true. I put that in the same classification. Maybe it's Avraham Avinu that he's rushing and running to the guests to welcome them in. It's true, Derech Eretz Kadam al Torah, but I'm still looking for a dialogue. Yeah. That's a Mishnah. I mean, that's in the Gemara.
Yeah.
That's not in the Torah. I'm looking in the Torah.
In the Torah.
So there's a pasuk actually in Yosef. Ever remember the story of Yosef? Yosef at Tzaddik, that he was sold by his brothers. You know, Yosef, if anyone has a more tragic story in the Torah, I don't think anyone can beat Yosef. If anyone remembers, let's say 20 years ago, you had these chain emails that said, orphan mother with 7 children looking for this donation. If you don't donate, you're going to lose your house. And if you don't forward this to 13 people, then then the person's going to get sick. You remember these chain emails?
Chain WhatsApp,
Right? These chain WhatsApp. I feel like Yosef at Tzaddik probably had the best misery campaign that probably anyone in the Torah. Mother died at childbirth. Brothers hate him. Sold him, threw him into the pit. Sold him to Ishmaelim. Threw in the jail for 10 years. He has no ransom, no family, no communication. Is looking donate here to this campaign. I feel like Yosef at Tzaddik is the one who's out and about, right? Out and out in his luck. Who had it worse than him? If you can imagine, Yosef at Tzaddik. He's sitting in the pit. He's sitting in jail. And what does he have? He's sitting next to the 2 Sarah Mashkim, Sarah Tabachim, the 2 chamberlains that are sitting in prison with him. And what do you think Yosef's attitude and character was in this moment? 10 years in prison, how is he supposed to feel? Probably like life chewed him up and spit him out, right? That's probably how you'd feel. Probably how I would feel. But Yosef, how does he feel? Listen to what he says. After sitting 10 years in jail, listen to what he says. He says, Madua penehem ra'im hayom. He goes to the Sarah Mashkim and he asks him, he says, Madua penehem ra'im hayom. He says, why the long face today? Which means what? It means he must have recognized that his face in every other day was not like this. He must have noticed that every other day that he's sitting in prison for a decade with these prisoners of war, with these prisoners of the cabinet of Paro, that every other day should have been fine. And if he said, Madua penehem ra'im hayom, that maybe today was different. That means Yosef HaTzadik was conscious of the way his face looked. He was conscious of the fact that, you know what, things do get better and things do lighten up. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But what's the word specifically that captures this, Chazal say? The fact that he says, Madua penehem ra'im hayom, today. Mashma what? Yesterday was unlike this, and the day before was unlike this, and the day before was unlike that. Imagine 10 years where a person's spirit and a person's nefesh is unbroken. A person's spirit is remaining strong, is remaining in a place where I know that I'm here, and I know it's very dark, but I know I'm going to get out. And still, my face is shining, and still I'm happy, because I know I'm with Hashem. I know that He's with me. And when he notices this of another person, he says, what's going on over here? So what's the Mishnah teaching? What's Rabbi Matya ben Charash really teaching us when he says, Magdim b'shalom? You know, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says in the Gemara that there was no one in history, no one before him, that ever beat him to a shalom. That means everywhere he went in life, he went to the mikveh, he went to the shuk, he went to the store, went to the shul, went to give a divrei Torah, there was no one that beat him to a shalom. How do you understand that? How do you understand that? All the days of his life, there was not one person. It's funny, like the part of me that wants to say that if I had lived in his time, I would have been the guy that hid in the bush, and I would have broken that streak, and I would have said hello before he was able to say hello to me. But what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was really teaching is he's coming and saying that even if he was the one who said shalom second, his shalom was really the real one. His was the first one. Because again, when a person says shalom just because he's answering back, it's not the same when he says it from his kishkas, when he says it with gusto, when he says it with real feeling. Because a person can feel that. A person can understand that. When they say, good morning, how are you? It's a nicety. I'm saying it back because you said it back to me. You said it first. But if I'm going to be the one that's magdim b'shalom, it means that I'm initiating this relationship. I'm going to be the one that's going to put my best foot forward and say, you matter that you're here. And it matters that I want to say hello to you. And you take up space in my life. You don't just take up space in the shul, but you take up space in my life. The person who comes and initiates that, he's magdim, bekol adam, even to the Jew, even to the non-Jew, to the goy, to the worker, wherever it is, that trains us more than it affects the other person. Because it shows us to have hakarat tov to the people that serve us, to the people that are all constantly trying to do good for us. When we're the ones that constantly put our best foot forward and say, I'm going to show another person what a Jew ought to be, then we are acting as a light unto the nation. The job, the role of us as Jews is to show the nation that it's not just in what we do, but it's in the people that we are. It's in the men and the women that we are becoming. It's in the fact that not only am I doing these things that are quote unquote holy, I have derech eretz. I'm a mensch first. I'm a ben adam first. And before I do anything, how are you doing? How's everything? It's like I spoke in shul on Shabbat that a lot of times when a person asks, how are you doing? The most common and the most innate thing to say is Baruch Hashem. But how many times do we use Baruch Hashem as a wall to hide how we really feel? How when we say Baruch Hashem, actually within ourselves, we feel like maybe things are not so good. But the worst part about it all is that we feel like that Baruch Hashem, the other person that's asking doesn't really care. And he's just asking, how am I doing? Because that's just what you do in a social setting. But imagine I start to strip away that Baruch Hashem. Imagine I start to say, you know what? Today was a hard day. Today didn't go as I thought it would. Today didn't go as I thought perhaps it should. Then maybe that Baruch Hashem begins to expand as real glory of God. Not the glory of God that's holding us back from admitting my emotions and letting other people in, but really showing myself and showing other people that we are connected. You know, shalom is not just peace, but it's also one of the names of Hashem. And I found this fascinating, because the halakha says you can't say shalom in a bathroom. You can't use the word Shabbat Shalom. You can't say Shabbat Shalom in a bathroom. What's the reason? Because shalom is one of Hashem's names. So you can't say shalom in the bathroom. But shalom also has a root to it. The root of shalom is shalem. Shalem means complete. Now what's the connection here? You know, when Hashem created Adam and Chava, He created them as the entirety of this thing called we call the human experiment, where every single human being to have ever lived, that lives today, and will ever live, is a progeny of Adam and Chava. And there's a wholeness, there's a completeness, that once I establish shalom between me and another person, between a woman and a man and a man, in a close relationship, whatever that shalom is, that is what creates shlimut. That's what creates completion. And when I go and I bring another person into my world, and I bring to them shalom, I'm in essence, in an effort telling Hashem, look at what I'm doing. I'm being mitaken this world a little bit more, not just by the shalom that I'm doing, but by bringing shlimut into the creation that you already brought here. By making another person smile, by making another person happy, by showing them that it's not just what I do, it's the person that I am, and that you matter, and that your feelings matter, and the person that you are matters. And I think that's what the rabbi's teaching here. Have magdim b'shalom kol adam, all people. That before you even become to think about what your avodas Hashem is, are you a ben adam first? Are you a ben adam first? And I think this first part of the Mishnah really ties beautifully into the next part of the Mishnah. Listen to the way the second part of the Mishnah continues. Ve'have zanav la'ariyot. And you should rather be a tail to lions, ve'al tihi rosh lasho'alim. And don't be a head to the foxes. What does that mean? Rather to be the tail to a lion than a head to a fox. Anyone know what that means?
Can you repeat it?
Huh?
You mean you would rather be a tail of a lion than...
Not that I would rather be. The Mishnah is teaching us.
The Mishnah is teaching
Magdim b'shalom, and also be a tail to a lion and not a head to a fox.
It's basically it's saying that it's better to be a tail of a lion.
Why?
A lion.
To be humble.
Yes.
Because so it's better to be like you're
Part of something.
like you're bad, but you're part of something better. So you're like part of something better, but you're not.
A lion is
well
bad?
there.
You're right.
Because in the
You're
other one-
characterizing a lion as
because in
bad.
The other one, you're the winner of the losers. That's not good.
What, the fox?
Yeah, the head of the fox.
The fox is the winner of the losers?
Foxes are the losers.
Okay.
Head of
Yes.
the foxes.
Okay, so look at it.
I hear. Okay.
Lion is the king of the animal kingdom, right?
Okay.
A fox is known for being smart, being sneaky, being deceiving, right?
Correct.
So when you're a lion, it doesn't matter what part of the lion you are, you're supporting like the greatest, animal in the kingdom. It doesn't matter.
So what does a lion represent?
Greatness, and it represents
And
also
strength.
God, right? Doesn't it like we see a lot of like lion pictures in the Torah and synagogues and stuff, right? Like the lion represents, right, like kingship, or I don't know what it exactly represents, but it's very like high and like up there, right? Versus a fox, very sneaky, very like deceiving,
Cunning.
right?
Cunning.
Right? So if you're the tail of the lion, you're still like a part of the best thing versus being the best part of like the sneakiest thing that's like cunning and deceiving. So it's like, it's like rather you're part of an animal that's the best rather than you're like the head.
So you're actually saying like what Andy's saying, very similar, because you're saying the lion
You said
represents.
1-to-1 what I said, man. I said better to be lion is you're being
That's what I'm
the
hearing.
part of the best,
I'm hearing what Andy
but-
said.
Yeah, but then the other one is that you're being the best of the worst.
The best of the worst.
Yeah, you're saying the same thing as him.
Steven, come on, man.
Is it
Way to reword it, man.
Put it into perspective, let's say.
Okay.
So, that's how I see it.
I hear. I think you guys are saying the same thing. I'm gonna challenge it though. Yeah. What are you gonna say? Maybe you want to challenge it.
Well, I'm not sure. I think I'm pretty much in agreement. It's better to follow it.
You want to paraphrase again?
No.
Okay.
I think
Third time's a charm.
because if you're at the head of something, you're leading most of the time, and going off of the whole fox characterizations, instead of leading your own group of fools.
The fox is a fool.
Very often foxes are sly and smart.
The fox is one of the most cunning.
The behavior tends to be foolish.
So let me try to unpack it. You want to say something? They all said. Okay, fine.
Rob, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Can a fox outsmart a lion?
So hold on. Let's unpack it. What is the midah? What is the character trait of a lion? Strength. Strength. The character trait of a lion is that it's strong.
Courage.
There's maybe courage also. There's 3,000 pounds of force in the swipe of a paw, right? The lion is strength. What is the character trait of a fox? We said it.
Cunning.
Sly, cunning. Why does a fox have to be cunning? Why is it that way?
To survive.
To survive, right? Because if it wants to survive in the animal jungle, it knows that it versus a lion, it will certainly kill it. It'll be killed. So if a fox wants to survive in the animal kingdom, it has to survive based on its wits, based on its cunning. And the Gemara is replete with this, where the fox tries to get the fish to jump out of the water, and the fox tries to circumnavigate certain parts of the animal kingdom. That's what a fox is known for. It's known for its cunning, right? And a lion is known for what? For its strength, for its gvura. Lion is known for, like we said, like Yehuda, it's the lion, it's Aryeh. It's going in its strength, and it's trying to go and conquer and to be the absolute best that it can be. And yet the Mishnah cautions us with something very fascinating. It says it's better to be the tail of a lion. Is the tail of a lion strong? Does the tail have any strength to itself at all? the tail is probably one of the weakest parts of the lion itself, as compared to the thigh, the leg, the paw, the head, its bite, its teeth. The tail is probably the weakest part of the thing that represents strength. And the fox, what is the most cunning part of the fox? The brain, its head, right? And so the Mishnah is teaching us better to be the weakest part of strength, but strength nonetheless, than the highest part of cunning and achieve it through deceit and through slyness. So this Mishnah is teaching us something very deep, and I think it's really shedding a light in relationships itself. See, relationships often fail, not because there's a lack of love, not because there's a lack of connection, not because there's a lack of similarity or unity between the two parties. But in most cases, relationships end up failing because there's a lack of courage. Because you know that there's something that needs to be said, that's something that needs to be addressed, something that needs to be put out in the forefront, put out into the ether, and is not being addressed. The weakest of men and the weakest of women are those that try to go and one-up the other party based on doing other political tricks, other document tricks, different sort of things of how I can get my way. That's the way of the fox. The way of the fox is that I can use my cunning and try to get the end and achieve the means that I want to get out of this relationship. Meaning, if this is what I want, I'm going to be able to do it. But you know, in a lot of the ways, many parties, you have a man and you have a woman, and they don't end up ever saying, I love you to the other, because they're scared to say it. Because one is going to say, what if I say I love you and they don't feel that way? Or they say, maybe I'll say I love you, and they don't feel the other way. And then both parties don't end up telling each other that they love each other, when in reality that's how they feel, and they end up breaking up. I see it time and time again. And so it's not that love was missing from this relationship, it's that courage was missing from this relationship. And that sometimes what you need in a relationship to prosper and grow is to say, maybe there needs to be boundaries, and maybe there needs to be something here that helps us build and grow together in a healthy way, rather than us constantly stepping on our toes and masking it in what we believe to be true love. And so what cunning can allow us to do is it can allow us to stoop and to be the lowest people that we can possibly imagine. Because you see in relationships all the time, this person would rather be right than happy. And you know where that right quality is going to take him? All the way to the divorce papers. He could be right all the way to the divorce court, to the court of law. Because that's what the cunning is going to get him. But you want to be strong? Even be the weakest part of strength, but be strong nonetheless. Be the tail. Don't be the head of the lion. Be the tail of the lion. But show that strength is the way the relationships are built. You know, there's a quote in Harry Potter, I think in the first movie. What does he say? I think Dumbledore says to Neville. He says, it takes a great deal of courage to stand up to your enemies, but it takes an even greater deal of courage to stand up to your friends. It's very easy for your friends to step on each other. It's very easy for those who you love and those who you developed a very close relationship with to step and blur those boundaries. But you know, once those boundaries are blurred and you feel like the relationship is ruined, if one does not step up with at least a little bit of courage, with at least a little bit of strength and gvura, then that relationship is only one-way ticket and it's all the way down. That's what the Mishnah is teaching. Having magdim kol adam l'shalom is to teach that when you go and you develop yourself into the person you need to be, it's not enough to just have shlimut. It's not enough to just say shalom. It's not enough to just show that you're the good person, right? But what kind of person are you constantly developing yourself to be? Is it that person that wants to get over on the other person? Or is it the person that says, you know what? This didn't sit right with me. And this doesn't make me feel so good. And this part of the relationship, this part of the conversation, this part of whatever we did, didn't feel like it was the right thing to do. And I want to talk about it. And even though it might cause friction, and even though it might cause some strife in the short term, the way you build a healthy marriage, the way you build a healthy relationship is only when the boundaries are clearly defined. Because the less defined those boundaries are, the more a person will just step on your toes and it's only going to get ugly. And so how much more so does a relationship not die because there's no love, but because there's no courage? And that's the depth of the Mishnah. You want to be magdim l'shalom? You want to be the one that wants to go and say hello first? You want to be the one that wants to go and build up the relationship? Fantastic. But remember which midah you want to encapsulate. Remember which character trait you want to be the one to show that this is what's important. You know, a lot of you guys, they went on the Poland trip, right? You went to the Poland, you went to see the Holocaust Memorial, the Holocaust death camps. There was a trip many, many years ago to Poland. And Rabbi Farhi, he used to take the students, and he used to take them right before Shabbat Kodesh to one of the places in Poland where 800 children were buried and slaughtered. I don't know if you guys visited that space. He took them to that place right before Erev Shabbat, right before Erev Shabbat Kodesh, and he showed them and he told them the stories of these children. He told them the lives that they led, the lives that they could have led, the people that they could have become, and the families they could have grown. And it's a very, very, very powerful moment in that time where he showed them that this was robbed. They were robbed of a proper living. They were robbed of a life. And many people move away very moved. They go into Shabbat and they feel like they're living on, they feel like they want to make the most of it. They want to go and message their parents. They want to go and call their father whom they haven't spoken to in years. Thank you. They want to go and they want to write a letter home that perhaps they haven't written to in years, right? It just makes them feel like they want to do that. And so one of the girls, she decides, you know what? I haven't written to my mom in so long. Let me write her a text before Shabbat. Let me write her a text before Shabbat and tell her everything, how much you mean to me, how much that perhaps I've been absent in your life and maybe you've been absent in mine, but with a little bit of courage, with a little bit of strength, I'll show you that really everything that you've done for me has made me the person that I am, and I'm just grateful that you're in my life. And she writes this beautiful text, she shows the rabbi, and she hits send. And then Shabbat comes in. She's thinking, she's happy that she did it, she's happy that she sent the text to her mom, the whole thing, the whole 9 yards. After Shabbat Kodesh comes in, it comes out, she's on cloud 9, she's happy, inspired. She opens up her phone, and she sees that there's a message back from her mom. And what does the message read? She says, I can't believe it. You went to Poland and you got drunk. And she starts bawling. She starts going into tears. She says, I can't believe it. I spilled my heart out to my mom. I opened up myself. I was incredibly vulnerable. I showed her a side of me that I've never showed her in my life. And she shows the rabbi. And the rabbi reads it, seeing how visibly disparate this woman, this girl is. And he says, when was the last time that you ever told your mother this? And she says, I never have. So he says, are you surprised that she thinks you were drunk? In relationships, we stand on principle. We stand on the fact that if she didn't know what she did wrong or he didn't know what he did wrong, he ought to have known better. And communication often takes a wall where we say, you know what? There's nothing moving. This person's a wall, this person's a rock. There's nothing I can do to break through. But if a person understands that it's not courage, it's not strength that keeps a person distant, it's weakness that keeps a person distant. It's the fact when a person cannot go and overcome his pride, overcome his ego, overcome his own emotions and say, you know what, I actually want to fix this. Not because there is distance, but because I want closeness. And that always comes from a place of weakness and not strength. But what the Mishnah is teaching is that even if you embody, even if you encompass the weakest part of the animal that represents strength, that is already miles ahead of the cunning of the head of the fox. So if we want to build back and we want to say that, you know what, our world deserves shalom. Our world deserves a Beit HaMikdash. Our world deserves Hashem's Shekhinah back and Galus to go. And we want to build shalom back. It's only going to come through one thing, and it's going to come through shalom. And it's going to come through peace. Because once a person understands that shalom and peace is peace through strength and not peace through weakness, peace through strengths is what solves and builds our relationships. And that's what brings the Shekhinah down to the world. So we should be zocheh to always recognize this, to remember that our job in this world is not to do. Our job in this world is to become. And what kind of people do we want to become? Exactly the one who goes and says, hello first. The one who goes and says, I'm strong. The one who goes and says that I have the power to bridge these gaps, to make this relationship as strong as it takes. It takes courage, and it's not always comfortable, and it's not always easy. But that's exactly what the Mishnah is teaching. So we should be zocheh to learn, to understand, to grow, and to become the best versions of ourselves. Zaku Baruch.